like to call the meeting to order. This is Rules and Open Government Committee meeting for August 7th, 2013. Any changes to the agenda order? None. Then we'll plow through, starting with the August 13th council agenda. Anything on page 1? Note that we're going to start closed session at 9. Got a lot on that agenda as well. Anything else on page 1? How about page 2 or 3? Page 4 or 5? Anything on page 6 or 7? Page 8 or 9? There's an asterisk on 4.2. I'm not sure what that asterisk refers to.
That means it changed since the previous agenda,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, so that's
I think it was
one
minor
of those.
language change.
Okay, number and change. Anything else on 8 or 9? Page 10 or 11. Item 6.1, audit of taxi services and regulations, San Jose. I don't think that's ready to come to the council. I'd like for it to come to council when staff is fully prepared to make recommendations, and it should go to the aviation, or not the aviation, the airport competitiveness subcommittee before it comes as well.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Staff is working toward the November meeting, I believe, of the Airport Competitiveness Ad Hoc Committee in order to bring forward other recommendations related to taxis. So I believe that November timeframe would work.
Yeah, and
Okay, Pete?
Mr. Mayor, we spoke about this at the Public Safety Committee meeting. I'm trying to remember what we said about that. I think that I don't remember, but I think that's in the spirit of what we talked about, so that's good.
Okay. Yeah, let's not get on the council agenda until we're prepared with recommendations so that people have more than just the audit to talk about. So we just drop that one and get it back through the committee. Anything else on 10 or 11? Page 12 and 13 are joint city council successor agency San Jose Diridon Authority agenda. Anything on those pages 12 or 13?
Question, Mayor?
Yes.
Will that item be last or just after consent calendar? Or?
It's a separate, the joint meeting would have to be called, so when do you want to take it up?
You might as well go last.
Okay. And then other questions. Rick, do you see us going back into closed session from the morning? I imagine we have a lot stacked up.
You never know. It is a long meeting, a long agenda right now. If we don't get through it and the council wants to take a break before the open meeting, there's a good chance. But we'll leave that for, there's an option.
And I think it probably depends on how long the labor part of the meeting takes.
Yeah, we estimate about an hour for labor. So.
All right, I have some requests for additions, and Councilmember Constance traveled to D.C.
Yeah, actually, Mayor, I want to drop the second one. I didn't realize when they changed the dates, it conflicts with 2 committee meetings and a council study session, so I'm just going to drop it and not participate.
Okay, that was travel to L.A.
Yes.
Drop item 2.x. So we have Councilmember Constance travel to Washington, D.C., and Councilmember Colorado travel to Chicago to add to the agenda. And then we have an agreement with the Association of Legal Professionals to be added that goes along with the other labor contracts that have been recently negotiated that are on the 13th. Do we need a sunshine waiver for that one?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Any other requests for additions?
I'll make a motion to approve as amended with the additions and the sunshine waiver on the ALP agreement.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. I have some requests to speak. Mr. Wall.
First off, it's glad to see the Rules Committee made it back from a very torturous vacation period. Glad you're all here. Ceremonial matters are now over. Item 3.10 is the sewer service and use charge. There's a problem with this. It should be, I think, deferred because later in today's program, the T&E's work plan, they have in December a flow study scheduled to set these rates. So I think there's a conflict here that needs to be addressed. 4.3, 1 Market Street. Now this is going to come up later today, I'm certain. There's some, I think this should be deferred too because there are serious issues raised by a law firm about there's no soils report for this building. It's prone to liquefaction. But mainly, Mr. Mayor, you should have caught this because of how they're going to deal with stormwater runoff. Looks like they're going to just discharge directly into the storm sewer system. I think that their roof system should go directly into the sanitary sewer where they could be a permitted discharger. That might alleviate some of this environmental concern. And 4.5, the Environmental Innovation Center report from Public Works, that should be deferred too because it's on, or at least updated, because there's a lot of things that are changing really quickly with that Albatross program now that Applegate Johnson Incorporated is bankrupt, and the city may not be able to complete this project with reference to the dictates of the new market tax credit lenders by December of this year. This is very serious business, sir, with this Environmental Innovation Center, as we will discuss it later. Thank you.
It concludes public testimony on this item. We have a motion to approve with the changes in the waiver. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. That's approved. Go to the August 30th meeting agenda. I'm sorry, August 20th. Anything on page 1? How about page 2 or 3?
Mayor?
Yes, Councilor.
3.3, can that go on the consent calendar, or does that have to stay on the regular?
That's Wells Fargo Bank for commercial card conversion services.
You can put that on the consent. There's
Yes.
nothing.
Okay, we'll have to move that then.
Anything else on page 2 or 3? How about page 4 or 5? Page 7 starts the general plan hearings. There are none public hearings on other land use matters. Anything on page 7? Or page 8 or 9?
Mayor, 11.3, if that item could be last.
7.3 is actions related to property southwest corner of West San Carlos and Sunol, probably the Ohlone project, better known name. There's only a few items on the agenda, so they'll all be close to last. That
That's
would be
wishful
last.
thinking that they're all going to be that short.
It'll still be close to last, but it might be a long time before we get to the end.
Just for information, Mayor, my office will be requesting an adjournment in memory that will bring the details to the clerk's office, and we'll see it next week at Rules. With that, a motion to approve is amended.
We have a motion to approve as amended. Mr. Wall?
2.8, the agreement with Habitat for Humanity Silicon Valley for the Environmental Innovation Center. I think that should be deferred again. Basically, you don't know if this building is going to be ready for occupancy on January 1st, 2014. It's very likely that this project will languish in the courts for some time. The surety people that have the performance bond, they're dragging their heels. So, and this is unfair to Public Works. By the way, I'm not complaining about Public Works. You folks were warned by me several times not to go down this road with this project. Now it's in your face. Now, I wouldn't give any contracts to anybody to try to go into that building until the building is secure, until it's built, until you dealt with all those contamination issues that were raised a long time ago. So I would definitely take this off the agenda until you have something from the surety bond company that building will be operational by this date. Otherwise, right now, Habitat, they can walk away from the agreement that they've already signed. And so can the Household Hazardous Waste Group with the county, because of the building is just too many problems, sir. Thank you.
That includes public testimony. We have a motion to approve with the amendments on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. That's approved. I don't think we have any study session agendas to consider. Legislative update, nothing. Meeting schedules. Councilmember Constant.
I just had a quick question. I know we have a hold on a date in August for a study session. I was wondering, did we have a topic, and is that happening?
The 29th, we would like to keep for the revenue measure. I think we'll likely recommend releasing the 22nd, but I don't think we can be clear until next week.
Right.
Okay.
Anything else on meeting schedules? Public record, anything from the public record the committee would like to pull for discussion?
Motion, note, file.
We have a motion to note and file. A couple of requests to speak on the public record. Mr. Wall.
Sir, we've already mentioned Applegate Johnson. It's on items J and K, and M. Those should be looked at, scrutinized. Also, Mr. Mayor, the issue about the capital improvement program at the Water Pollution Control Plant. Now, we've had many discussions about this at the Treatment Plant Advisory Committee. I believe they have roughly $250 million at the start of the fiscal year in this fund. I believe $60 million was rebudgeted from last year. Now we're 2 months into this year, and here we are again, Mr. Mayor. You have a ton of money, or 2 tons of money, sitting in this capital improvement project program fund. And what's been done at the plant? You figure if you took your $250 million and divided it by 12, it's a little over $20 million. So that's $40 million that could have been spent on rehabbing digesters, for example, or doing something out there at the water pollution control plant, but nothing's being done, with the exception of loading up water pollution control plant's overhead with public works engineers, which we will discuss at a later point in today's soiree. The issue with the gentleman's lounge will occur later today too, but this was also referenced with item L, I believe. Now, there's a lot of things that this council could have done prior to this, but council voted, I believe, to allow people to get drunk in public 6 times before the San Jose police can arrest them. Santana Row has come before council many times, those poor residents that bought into those high-priced condos, that they can't sleep at night because of the bars, and nothing's been done to help them. You have rampant marijuana clubs just about everywhere all over the place. This council has increased gambling, so now it's no surprise to me that we have this club showing up downtown, Sin City. Thank you.
Martha O'Connell.
I'd like to thank and acknowledge the staff person in the city clerk's office that put a different title on this sexist, disgusting letter in the packet, letter L. We don't need this kind of language. I don't need to come down here as a woman and see these words. It's offensive. It's not funny. It's not clever. High school students that come through here don't need to see this offensive language. I was remiss about 2 months ago when a similar letter was written about Councilperson Constant, and a reference was made which was supposed to be amusing about him wearing a dress and high heels. It's very troublesome that when some men want to attack other men, they attribute female characteristics to them, and I think that that was out of line, and I should have said something at the time. I'm sorry, Councilperson Constant, I did not. I did not find it amusing, and I find this kind of thing objectionable in the public record, and I again thank the city clerk's office for changing the title of this sexist, demeaning letter. Thank you.
That concludes the testimony on the public record. We have a motion to note and file. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unopposed. That's approved. We'll move to the section F, boards, commissions, and committees. First is an appointment to the Library and
Motion
Area
approved.
Education Commission of Anthony Fan. Motion to approve. On that motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unopposed? Approved. Item number 2 are work plans. We have Ethics Commission fiscal year work plan, Elections Commission fiscal year 12-13 annual report, City Auditor's fiscal year 13-14 work plan, and the Airport Commission work plan for fiscal year 2013 and annual report for fiscal year 12-13 Commission work plan. You have some requests to speak on these. Any questions from the committee before I do that? Mr. Wall?
Sir, with reference to the approval of the city auditor's fiscal year 2013-2014 work plan, I would like to first thank the auditor and the auditor staff for their continuing great service on finding administrative screw-ups and putting a stop to them as best they can. But it's come to my attention is how the Environmental Innovation Center was actually funded. I think that needs to be scrutinized by the auditor's office, because it appears finance, in their own great ways, made a lot of money off of some water pollution control plant funding. And the details are in city documents that can be provided. And these funds went unreconciled for some time until there was a large balance in them, and somebody said, hey, we got like $18 million that we've made through prudent bond investments, be them fixed rate bonds or variable rate bonds. But these monies were also governed, and their interest governed, by Proposition 218. So somebody somewhere made the decision to use this money, or a portion of it, to pay the housing department for the Las Plumas property. Now this raises another interesting issue. General Services conveyed that property to the housing department. Housing department apparently couldn't turn it into a homeless shelter because of the contamination. So they went out and got an outside appraiser to appraise the property at $4.5 million, which ESD, the Environmental Services Department, quickly transferred the money, ratepayers' money for sewer service and use charge and whatnot, and from these bond proceeds, to purchase Las Plumas. Whereupon this whole nasty business with Applegate Johnson, the new market tax credit, and everything else has landed in your lap, Mr. Mayor. And so I think a full audit of how this innovation center came about is very prudent, sir, because it looks like
Sorry,
a
your
lot
time
of
is
shady
up.
money.
Keith Graham. Mr. Graham, if you'll squeeze the handle of that, it'll slide up a little higher. And there you go.
Bit better. Okay. Honourable Mayor, members of the committee, I stand before you again as the chair of the Airport Commission and ask you to uphold the desires of the Airport Commission to include an item in the work plan, which was to have a stakeholder meeting for the West Side development. This was passed unanimously at our meeting in May to be included in the work plan. It has been sidelined by airport staff from the work plan as it stands. The Commission understands that the West Side development is vitally important to the success of the airport. We understand furthermore that there will be public outreach meetings held with stakeholders to discuss the West Side development. However, commissioners who are able to attend would only be able to attend as members of the public and would not have the opportunity to discuss, ask questions directly of the stakeholders in question. We have now 6 freshmen joining the Commission in our newly expanded version, of which at least 5 of those do not have the depth of understanding of all the issues coming before the Commission, especially the West Side development. We would therefore ask that this Rules Committee uphold the Commission's request to add to our work plan a specific stakeholder agenda item such that the Commissioners may have a correctly convened session at which to ask and get their questions answered of the stakeholders in question. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public testimony on these items. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I make a motion to approve items A through C.
Motion is to approve staff recommended items A through C. On that motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. These are approved. We'll move into Section G, Rules Committee reviews, recommendations, and approvals. We have 3 items at the beginning that are special event items for approval.
Motion to approve all 3?
Motion is to approve all 3. That's the Shakespeare in the Park, Semana Jalisco Magico events, and Immigration Fraud Awareness event. On those items, Richard Zappelli.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I live across the street from Old Street Park and enjoyed the Shakespeare in the Park. We had
You just pull that microphone down just a little bit. There you go.
Absolutely no complaints whatsoever. Everything was peaceful and nice. All our neighbors were excited about it. I saw record attendance almost every night. I'd like to see this thing go forward. Thank you.
Great. That concludes public testimony on those 3 items. We have a motion to approve. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? It's approved. Item 5 on the list is an HP grant to College of Adaptive.
Motion
City
approved.
Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, it's being dropped for now.
Okay, drop number 5. Number 6, public calendars, report on posting of public calendars by city officials on the city website. Tom?
It's really nothing unusual about this report. It's 88%, which we've been at for a while, and so unless you have some questions, that's all.
Any new technical issues that have cropped up?
Not really, no.
Okay.
Hey, Don, before you go away, I meant to call you before the meeting. Same question I had before. If we update on Friday instead of Monday, is that considered in compliance or not?
I typically consider that in compliance because people are planning like a 3-day weekend or something like that.
Okay. Because I know we update every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and somehow we showed having one not updated, even though our records show it was. So just wondering on that.
If you can tell me what you want it is, I'll check on it and
Okay.
get back to you.
Thanks.
Second.
Motion to approve the report. Mr. Wall, you want to speak?
Sir, I just wanted to say that there's not one of you folks or any of the council members that do any shady business that when it comes to these calendars, it looks like you didn't turn them in on time. It's been my position all along that this process is burdensome and oppressive to you because it takes time away from you serving the public that much greater. But with reference to this go-around, I will give the highest regards and highest marks to Councilmember Campos because he's been out in his district helping his community, and that may have been a reason why some of those boxes are not all checked the way they should be. And I think you should try to make some motion to get rid of this thing because it's just a millstone around your neck that doesn't do any good whatsoever. Thank you.
That concludes testimony on this item. We have a motion to approve. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. That's approved. Takes us to item number G7. That's the appointment of voting delegate and alternate to the League of California Cities
Motion
Business
approved.
Meeting. We have a motion to approve Councilmember Herrera and Councilmember Constant to those spots. On that motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. That's approved. Item 8 is the chess clock and open data initiative. We have requests to move those forward from Councilmembers Liccardo and Camus.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Okay, Councilmember Liccardo is here. I don't know if he wants to speak to this one or not. Not the chess clock. Jerry DeYoung.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm standing here today representing the San Jose Silicon Valley Chamber of Commerce. You have a letter that I hope has gotten to you in favor of this, and I just wanted to thank Councilmember Liccardo and Camus for bringing this forward. I also wanted to let you know that I chair a subcommittee of the Chamber called the Development Review on a monthly or every other month basis. We actually meet with Joe Horwittle and the senior staff. We've been doing this for several years. We've had very active discussions on permit streamlining and working at the speed of business, so we're hopeful that this small piece that Councilmember Liccardo and Camus have brought forward will be approved by the council, and that we look forward to continuing our conversations with the senior staff on working at the speed of business. Thank you.
Mr. Wall?
Sir, it's good, right, and salutary that council members Liccardo and Camus decided to take this to CED. I'm very much concerned, though, on two issues. One, it begs the question that the process isn't transparent already and that our city manager isn't running PBCE appropriately, or the director of PBCE isn't doing his job. Those two things are fallacies. So we then see this new project, and how much is it going to cost? How much is the actual program it's going to cost to maintain, to implement? I think this is cost prohibitive, personally, especially with reference to the loss and hemorrhaging of very valuable city employees predicated on Measure B and other aspects. So I think Mr. Liccardo's come up with a good idea, but I think this is very costly. And at least this committee, CED, will look at it. I'm not sympathetic from anything from the Chamber of Commerce that comes before this group, for they have their own interests in this matter. Thank you.
City staff, we have a previous direction in the budget message, which was approved by the council in June to work on this. I know this is a work in progress, so you want to talk about where we are and how we could move this forward?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee, as you point out, in the June budget message, we did have direction to work on chess clock. It also ties to, on the issue of open data, to a manager's budget addendum on that topic. So this ties in quite well, I believe, with ongoing work. As noted, going to CED. In fact, I believe the draft CED work plan already calls for an update on development services to come next month in September as well. So we can fold this into that report, as well as on the topic of the open data, the referral, having staff coming back, I believe, to public safety by January. So we'll put this in the mix with the other items that are working together. I think by the report that goes to CED next month, we should have a pretty good handle on the scope of what the next steps would be. So with that, I'll ask Joe to elaborate if you care to.
Okay.
No, just that we have a number of pieces of it already up and running, but we continue to go and add to that. And so at CED committee next month, I was going to go show what's been online, what happened new as of September, and then what the next stages are that we're off working on, and kind of what's in kind of the scope of what we think we can do, and to the extent there's stuff that we push out as open data for others to go chew on, we can go kind of walk through that also.
Maybe could I also add
Sure.
my comments and questions? There are partners out there who are very interested in working with us. I know we've had some conversations with Joint Venture Silicon Valley, with folks at San Jose State and others who want to help us with this open data initiative. And so this is not intended as a means of putting more work on city staff. I think there are lots of folks, community partners, who are interested in doing the work with us.
Okay, anything else, Ed?
No, nothing else, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed, that's approved. Item 9 is the rules and open government referrals to the Election Commission and referrals back from the Election Commission with recommendations for mostly no changes to Title 12. Items 9 and 10 are a group of recommendations from the Ethics Commission. So let's take both of those together. We had this here in front of us once before. I wanted to bring it back in August so that these could move together with my biennial ethics review recommendations, which are later on the agenda. But let's take up these two at this time, see if there's any other questions from the committee on that work. First, any comments from the city clerk or city attorney, what's been written?
This is primarily the same as what you saw before in June. You had requested additional policy alternatives on the issue of confidentiality. And so we have a few different options that we came up for you. So that's about the biggest change since June. And so that's the first attachment on G10.
Okay. Councilor Constant?
One of the questions I had asked, and I'm not sure if you're just planning on bringing it when it comes to council, was the voluntary expenditure limit section. I see in the second memo, you note that in the background. But I had asked about the scarlet letter aspects that I know there's been some cases in
Yeah.
that area. Just wondering if we had made any progress in that area or if that's going to come to council instead of
Yeah,
us.
I had met with the attorney on that. It's not quite the scarlet letter, because scarlet letter is a negative, whereas most people get a positive, but Arlene might be able to speak better to it.
Arlene Silva is the attorney that represents or does the work with the commission and clerk's office.
Great.
Okay, with regards to the scarlet letter, there is no cases out there that which states that it's prohibited.
Okay.
It's pursuant to participation in a program, you shall have the designation. Because we have that program, then you either get it or you don't get it. And
Okay.
it's constitutionally fine to have that.
Okay. So the difference is whether you're saying this person does versus this person doesn't?
It's pretty much a designation to inform the public that a particular candidate is a participant of the program and therefore has the designation.
Okay, good.
So it's a gold star, not a scarlet letter.
Correct.
Right, and it's because it's a voluntary program.
Okay. And with the changes we had recently, this is really the only aspect of the voluntary program, right? It's that designation?
Yes, it's the only incentive. There's no additional benefits.
Okay, thanks. So is the appropriate motion then to refer it to the biannual ethics review?
No,
Or-
I think we want to put all that on a council agenda, but I'd recommend it not be the 13th. Looking at the length of the agenda, probably the 20th.
Okay, that's okay with me, so I'll make a motion that these two items come to council on the 20th.
We have a motion to put them on the agenda for the 20th, and we'll come back to the biennial ethics review in order here as we get down the discussion. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Not opposed? That's what we'll do, add those to the 20th. So that takes care of 9 and 10. The question on that, though, before we move on, and that is the gift ordinance part of it, which is the last paragraph of discussion. It says it will come forward on its own timeline separate from the elections-related Title 12 amendments. Is there a timeline on that?
Yeah, that's turned out to be a lot more complicated than anyone envisioned, because if we just go straight with state law, that's the easiest fix. To the extent we're trying to reconcile or to make tweaks to our own ordinance to be as consistent with state law. The state law, particularly state regulations, complicate things and interpretations, so we're still working on that, and we'll come back to the committee probably before we take it to council to sort of give you a first read as to how we see this moving forward.
Okay.
So we can't just have an ordinance that says just say
Yeah,
no?
well, you can have an ordinance that says just say no, but, or you can adopt state law, that's the easiest. But to the extent we have our own $50 rule and et cetera, I think that's where it gets complicated. I'd like to say it's a lot simpler than that, but it isn't.
Okay, well, we'll come back to this when we get down to the biennial ethics review item, I think, looking at the timing of both of those. So we'll move into the next item, which is 11. That's a request via memo from Councilmember Oliverio regarding a second tier for fire union and freezing hiring of firefighters until the second tier. Councilmember Oliverio, you want to speak to your memo?
Thank you, Mayor Reed. So first I want to let everyone know that the fire department is fully staffed. However, we have a situation where we don't have a second tier lower cost pension plan in place for the fire union. That's for future employees, our new hires. However, we do have it in place for every other union, including police. And the problem is that if we, as vacancies will occur in the future, that if we hire new employees on the old pension plan, we're just creating more unfunded liabilities, and it's not giving us the cost savings to hire new employees in other departments, whether it be a police officer or code enforcement. And we have this because the voters passed Measure W was it November 2010? And so that's how we've negotiated now with every other union that has a second tier in place, again, for new employees. And unfortunately, we were not able to have that type of, in the case of fire union, we have what's called arbitration. We were unable to get to arbitration. They would refuse to go there. So the council had to vote to go to a judge. And the judge has compelled them to go to arbitration. But unfortunately, the process in itself is still very long, could take upwards of a year. So in the meantime, hiring new people on these vacancies is unfair to the other employees that have accepted this second tier, lower cost second tier for new hires, but also doesn't give us the cost savings to add additional police, for example. And since I wrote this memo, the fire union is actually appealing the judge's ruling, so it's going to take even longer. So being that we're fully staffed, I think we need to look at this at a policy level because we have to decide, you know, the level of importance of this. And so, and I'm also kind of cognizant of the city manager, city council relationship, so I want to be respectful of that. So that's why I said request versus direct. But I do think it's something that, you know, to see what city management would think, and then you decide if that's sort of a policy call for the council, et cetera.
Mayor?
City manager has some comments. You want to go first? Okay, let's go to city manager.
Yes, well, thank you. And I do appreciate Councilmember Oliverio's comments, and I'll just reinforce some of them and maybe add a little bit more flavor, and then staff is here to respond to any of the questions. I do think that getting a second tier in place is definitely a priority, and a hiring freeze is an administrative tool that we use. In fact, we continue to use a modified hiring review to ensure that resources are aligned with positions as we're hiring back. So I really think the council policy call here is about saving money and really trying to avoid bringing people into Tier 1 for as long as possible without eroding service. So I would agree that a freeze is a good technique based on our discussions with the department. They are really not intending on doing any more hiring until they can get that next academy in, I believe, in August of 2014. They expect to have about 18 vacancies by June of next year. And so really putting a freeze on right now is not going to harm service level as far as we can see. And as I said, would give us time to really work hard to get that second tier into place, as we have with all of our other bargaining units, as council member indicated. One caveat I would give you, and that is the SAFER grant. The SAFER grant requires that as vacancies occur, we not drop below a certain threshold that we committed to in the grant, and it is 678 sworn positions. When we do have vacancies, we are supposed to fill within 6 months. The staff, regardless of the idea of the freeze, was already pursuing with SAFER a waiver to that part. As I indicated, that would be because we really don't want to hire incrementally and do many academies incrementally. We want to just save up until we have the opportunity to offer one academy. So the conversation with FEMA is underway. The idea of a freeze, if it meets your policy objective, ultimately to save money and not bring new staff into Tier 1, is an administrative matter. I don't really need council's approval. So what we could do is to continue our conversation with FEMA, and in a few weeks, maybe a month, through info memo, let you know where we're at and that the freeze is on. I would say clearly we're not going to do any hiring in 30 days. And then the other thing I would do is clearly come back to you if we felt that either the Tier 2 process was delayed. The council would certainly know about that because we would be talking about it along the way. Or if there was a public service issue that might be problematic, that would say, you know, we really should hire regardless. You made a similar kind of judgment. We had to fill a police academy, bring people into Tier 1, but we really did what we could to hold for that second academy. So I guess the bottom line is staff would support the idea of a freeze and really doing all that we can to get a second tier into place. Jennifer Shembri of the Office of Employee Relations is here. If you have more questions about Tier 2, I think the council member highlighted the key issues well, as well as Ron Dacchioli, I believe, is here from the fire department. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Councilor Constant?
Yeah, thank you. And the city manager mentioned, or alluded to one of the things I was going to mention, and that's, we ran into the same problem with the police department, and we missed the window by really a very short period of time, and ended up putting a full academy class of folks into a broken system. And it really isn't fair to those new hires who will come in and have to pay an exceedingly high contribution rate compared to what we've seen in the federated plan is a much improved lower contribution rate, not only on behalf of the city, but those individual employees as well. So I think this is, well, it's good that we're not going to be hiring for this period till we have an academy class. And I think hopefully we don't go beyond that time in getting the second tier, because it's something that not only have we had a number of discussions about, and voters have opined on a couple of occasions on what we should be doing, but we also just had the Measure B court case where none of the union's attorneys that were involved in the proceeding objected to the second tier. Everybody acknowledged in court that the second tier was not a bone of contention, and that it should go forward and is going forward, and no violations of any laws or any controversy whatsoever. So this is something that hopefully will get resolved soon, and I think we need to do everything we can as a city and administration, as a council, to make sure we address that appeal in an aggressive manner and get pushed, have a concerted push to get this arbitration in and completed.
Anybody else want to have a request to speak from the public? Mr. Wall?
Sir, the two-tier system was sired from the bastard loins of incompetent councils for not doing your jobs. This is just fact. Now we have the firefighters, the last union that's not involved with the two-tier system. In other words, the second-class citizenry of city employees. I've raised the issue of institutionalized hesitation. You have created this within our public safety forces, both the police now with their two-tier system and impending with the fire department. People who risk their lives as part of their jobs cannot hesitate. Their partners cannot hesitate because somebody will get hurt or killed, especially when we concern ourselves with the firefighters. Their inherent job could lead them to burn to death. It's not like, for example, God made hell to send the damned, right? Now the damned go down there, they don't get shot by a gangbanger's bullet, or they get hanged or anything else. It's fire. It's hurt. It's designed to hurt. And so when we have our firefighters out there and what you've done to them through ministerial misconduct over years, not just you folks, but previous councils, with reference to funding or not funding retirement systems. I support the firefighters staying as a whole. No two-tier in that department whatsoever because of the nature of the job that they do. They save us from burning to death. And I think that this city should make note of that and hold them out as a very unique department, meritorious of respect, concern, and that they're all equal in that department as opposed to other city departments. Thank you.
That concludes public testimony. Any questions or
Just make
comments?
a parting shot that, you know, there's cities like LA that have 7 tiers of retirement system, and their employees all work harmoniously together. And it's any implication that people in a different tier are second class or third class or fifth class employees is completely false.
Also, the manager's recommendation is to let her do what she does and come back with an info memo
Yes.
on the status of it in a month or so.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's it.
Councilor Oliverio?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
Motion to do such.
Second.
Motion is to refer to the city manager as discussed. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. That's approved. Item 12, adult entertainment regulations, memorandum from Councilman Liccardo, who's here. If somebody'd like to speak to his memo. Nope? Okay. We'll get into some discussion then. First question I had, I guess, would be for the city attorney, and whether or not you're prepared to tell us at this time how much we can or cannot do in this area, given the limits of the Constitution and all the work that we've done around nightclubs in general, and where we might be in terms of any additional regulatory scheme.
I think the short answer is you can't base your regulations based on the content of the speech. It is First Amendment activity and is afforded certain protections. I think the memo goes into that and recognizes that, but there are things you can do addressing secondary impacts, health and safety concerns, and I think that would be the area that we would, and I think that's what the memo gets to in terms of requesting staff to come back with various issues that we can address, whether it's distance requirements and other types of things that would effectively regulate the secondary impacts or the health and safety concerns that are raised in the memo.
And since you can't regulate content, any regulations would apply to whether they are, let's say, a nightclub or a coffee house kind of an operation, right? It wouldn't just be...
You know, arguably, if you've got belly dancing or a coffee house, or, you know, as long as people aren't, this does not involve nudity. I mean, let me be clear that if it was nudity, it'd be a different story.
What story would it be? We can
well,
ban
we can and we have.
Okay.
But this stops short of that. And I think, again, though, that there are potential secondary impacts. I think there are a number of cities that are looking at and struggling with what types of regulations. I know there are cities that have done studies, Sunnyvale in particular, on the secondary impacts, and I think we can sort of tap into those and come back with our own set of proposals.
Either comments or questions?
Mayor?
Councilor Oliverio?
So would this be then an ordinance that would come to the council for ordinance prioritization? Would that be the process we're picturing?
That's really the council's call. I mean, in terms of the desire to bring forward something sooner rather than later, I think this is planning to open tomorrow.
Yeah, if I could maybe speak a bit about the timing. We're obviously not going to have an ordinance in place by the time this particular establishment opens. I know that there may be an issue about the renewal of the CUP that's several months off. I would expect to go through the prioritization process. That's perfectly fine. But my hope is that there may be a fairly low cost, low amount of thinking approach. I mean, I'm sorry, let me back up. I think there are some fairly simple things we can do in the short term, more complex things that would take more time.
The thinking may be low cost, but it's,
yes.
but it's extensive.
Yes, understood. So it may be at the prioritization that there are things that the city attorney can identify that can be implemented relatively quickly, and perhaps we would accelerate those at the time of the prioritization.
And city manager, the priority session, is that coming up at the end of August? When's that scheduled?
The mayor and I are actually talking a little bit later, so it'll either be part of the August 29th session, which right now that's pretty full with revenue. We have another date on hold right after that, September 3rd. That could also be useful for prioritization.
Okay, yeah, I certainly think any ordinance, any of the topic, I just think that there's a variety of ordinances that have been proposed over time, and so council should decide that priority on that particular day. And good news is it's relatively soon in comparison where it could have been on a calendar year.
Yes.
Well, I'd certainly like to know what other cities have done. We're probably the last big city in the country that doesn't have this kind of an operation. So somebody must have thought about this and attempted to do things within the limits of the Constitution in the past.
There is a lot of literature out there.
Okay, Councilor Constant.
Thanks. So first I want to say I don't agree with coming up with ordinances to deal with one business. And I think that those of us who have been around a while know that we have in other parts of the city currently, and we have in the past in several parts of the city had businesses like this, and a lot of the potential problems that are supposed or proposed in this memo, we didn't see explicitly in any of those operations. And while I know there's studies about secondary impacts, almost every one that I've seen, and including what Sunnyvale is grappling with, are for strip clubs and full nudity. And very few of them isolate this particular type of operation where there is no nudity. So I really am not in favor of this moving forward, basically because, one, that it targets one business, and second, as I mentioned, we have a business in town now that has been there for a long time. It was there when I was the beat patrol officer in that district. It was there when I was a vice officer working in the city. And there has not been, to my knowledge, or is currently any evidence that these issues are extremely prevalent in that location compared to other bars and nightclubs. And I know that a lot of the nightclubs we have downtown, we've experienced shootings and stabbings and all kinds of negative, bad things, and none of them are this type of establishment, but we haven't experienced that at the bikini bar that we currently have in the city. So I just think it's a lot of overregulation, to be blunt, and that it's directed at one business, and I just think we should not go forward with it.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Is Joe still here?
Joe Horverdal?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in the back.
Oh, okay. It's just Joe, I just had a couple of questions.
Just discreetly sitting quietly in the back.
I hope it's not a demonstration.
So my understanding that the owner of the Gold Club has gone through an 8-month planning process with city staff.
They
Is that
have
right?
not gone through any planning process with city staff.
Oh, I'm sorry, with the Office of Economic Development staff. No?
Police department.
Or the police
Could
department?
be through police permitting, correct?
Okay.
For an
Does
entertainment
does anyone know how long it take them from the time they decide to open this club to their grand opening that's going to happen on Thursday?
That I don't know. The one caution I would put is that there's a large difference between when an application is filed with the city and when somebody says they've started working with the city.
Okay.
Meaning they picked up the phone and called someone or looked at a website.
And does this particular establishment, does it require CUP?
This property already has a conditional use permit, as Councilmember Ricardo noted. It was previously the Vault, and so it was a bar and nightclub. It currently has a conditional use permit amendment on file with the city requesting a change to their operating conditions to allow the doors to remain open, which staff has said we would not support. They have tabled that proposal, an application, until their use permit renewal comes up later this year. At that point, they will ask to extend their conditional use permit because it does expire at the end of this year. And that is for a drinking establishment and I think a nightclub use.
Okay. So I have a couple issues with this. You being the only woman on this panel, obviously, I don't appreciate establishment that potentially could exploit women or young women, and I don't think that this club is doing that. Obviously, this is an adult entertainment establishment. Anyone who works there would be over the age of 21, so they would be considered adults. What I have issues with, though, is the fact that we are trying to impose regulations and restrictions on a business that hasn't been open yet. And the fact that we don't even know if they're going to do well or they're going to operate well or if they're going to be in compliance with city regulations, we don't know. And I think that we're making assumptions based on something that we don't know. And I think that we're also pushing staff to do certain work, again, that we don't really know how it's going to pan out. We consistently talk about wanting to create a vibrant downtown. Obviously, this is going to add to that vibrancy to a certain extent. But at the same time, though, we just embrace this storefronts initiative where we're actually giving people money to offset permit costs, taxes, fees at the rate of $16,000 per potential tenant. And so if we're encouraging that, and at the same time, this is a store frontage establishment. So I just have a problem with us sending mixed messages to potential tenant. You know, in one hand, we're saying, come on to downtown, open your store, we'll be very supportive. And here we have an establishment that's opening its door, or will open its door, and we're saying, let's start imposing these regulations and restrictions, and hopefully they'll close the door soon. So that's my problem. And I think that there will be an opportunity for us to probably look at this, maybe perhaps 6 months or a year after this establishment opens. But at this point, I'm not ready to support something that I haven't seen, and whether or not they're going to be successful, whether or not they're going to be a good neighbor, whether or not they're going to be able to provide vibrancy to our downtown, which is, again, is something we'd be advocating for. So I agree with Councilmember Constant. I don't think that we should spend time and effort on trying to stop something when we haven't even seen what it's going to bring to our downtown.
And if I could just add, Mayor, you know, I think where we have a real problem, and I'd rather see our time and efforts and enforcement, whatever we're going to do, is with the bad acting coffee shops that we have in several parts of the city, including the Vice Mayor's district, where we know that there is nudity and all kinds of problems that are in violation of not only our city regulations, but all types of things. And that should be where we're putting our effort before something like this, where, as I mentioned earlier, we've had these establishments and we have no pattern of problems or abuses.
May I respond, Mayor?
Certainly.
Thank you. I think it's important, and context is always important as we think about what land use goes where in the city. After all, that's our business as a council, is to determine what's an appropriate land use in different parts of the city. I think it's noteworthy, and I think the establishment that Councilmember Constance is referring to is AJ's, which is in a part of the city that's not particularly close to a lot of what folks might consider to be sensitive uses. I don't recall there being any schools nearby or any other, a lot of daytime. Perhaps you can identify that.
Broadway schools, what, PIERLUIGI, about 2 blocks?
Luther Burbank.
Luther Burbank's 3 blocks in one direction. Broadway.
Yeah, but that's on the other side of San Carlos.
Broadway's just a couple blocks right down the street on the same street.
It's in an industrial area. You agree with me on that? It's surrounded by industrial uses.
Right.
Right, okay. So it's fundamentally in an area that nobody is expecting to be frequented at 5 or 6 o'clock anyway. I think the point is that there are spillover impacts, and none of us is an expert on vibrancy in the downtown more than the businesses that are already there. And what I'm hearing from a restaurant across the street, from a taqueria a block away, is we are really concerned about this club being here. We think this is the wrong place for this club. Now, I recognize there's a First Amendment issue here, and I'm not inclined in any way to regulate in a way that would be valid over the First Amendment. But we do have the ability to impose regulations that are sensible, and I know that we have the capacity to do that both from the staff level and the council level in a way that's not overbearing. You know, Councilmember Nguyen was absolutely right that we don't know what will happen. This could be perfectly fine. It could be a mess. But wouldn't it be better for us to at least be able to anticipate, that is, to understand where the hockey puck is going to be rather than skating where the puck is. The point is, we are not going to be able to put any regulations in place for several months anyway. By the time this establishment needs a renewed CUP, there will be a public process. That will be sometime in early 2014. Is that right, Joe?
That would be my estimate, yeah.
That will be the first time we'll have a public process of any kind on this permit, in which people in the community will be able to have any comment. Now, if nobody comes to the microphone and there are no concerns, then we don't have anything to worry about. But it seems to me if there are concerns, we ought to have at least thought out what regulations, what conditions might be appropriate on a permit in this case, and an establishment that's adjacent to several other retail establishments, meaning restaurants, as well as a ballet club that's around the corner and a school that's a few blocks away.
So, Sam, wouldn't you admit that telling people what kind of shoes they can wear is an infringement on the First Amendment?
There's nothing in this memorandum that tells anyone what shoes they can wear.
Sure it is. It's 2D, talks about performers with very high heels. I mean, should the city really care if someone's wearing flats, 2-inch heels, 3-inch heels, or 5-inch heels? To me, that is an infringement.
The regulation relates to dancing on elevated platforms. regardless of what kind of tables or what kind of shoes they wear.
Well, it clearly says, or involving performers on high heels. I just think that there's a lot of areas that this goes, and,
Yeah,
you know, as far as
before that, Pete, particularly.
As far as if you talk about whether industrial areas or downtown commercial areas are the appropriate areas, if you look in every major city, they're in the downtown areas. And I think there's clear, there is no clear demonstration that there are increased problems with clubs that don't have nudity. So, anyway, that's my.
If I could correct the record, because I think the word particularly was omitted, I think, when Councilmember Constant read this. The point is the regulation, the proposed regulation would be around dancing on elevated tables that are not of appropriate size, a stage, essentially. And the point of the clause, particularly within close proximity of patrons consuming alcohol involving performers in high heels, was a consideration that would inform the council about whether or not it makes sense to actually have a regulation like this.
Well, if you're going to correct the record, don't skip the word "or" that's in there. So
that's correct.
All right, the record is written anyway. Anybody who wants to look at it can read it for themselves. I have to admit, I'm not really clear about the difference between bikini bars, cabaret clubs, gentlemen's clubs, strip clubs, or coffee houses where they don't wear very many clothes. And nor do I really want to know the distinction. So it's just not very clear to me, but it seems to me that the central problem in all of this is the problem that we have with nightclubs as well as other businesses, and that is, are they following the law? Not what the regulations say, but are they in fact following the law? Because a lot of what I've heard about some of these kinds of operations strike me as in violation of our existing law, like the nudity part we've already dealt with. So how do we make sure, whatever the regulatory scheme is for a gentleman's club or whatever you're going to call this, how will we make sure they follow the law, just as how do we make sure our existing nightclubs follow the law is sometimes a problem. And if they actually follow the existing law, is that enough? Or are they planning to come in and just do whatever they want to do, no matter what the law says, which is often a common approach to things? And so I'm interested in trying to figure out, okay, if we have an ordinance, how do we make sure that they follow the ordinance just as much as they are required to follow the existing ordinances?
Well, I think we have ordinances that the zoning is one area, but the entertainment permit that this club has is enforced by the police department, and the police department is required to enforce that. Similarly, the ABC has restrictions placed on that. This club has an alcohol beverage license, and there are ABC restrictions on place. How effective or how much the ABC is able to control that or enforce that is an issue that's a matter of state law, but it really gets down to the short answer is the police department enforcing its entertainment permit. And as the council member says, the CUP is up for review every 5 years. I think it's a 5-year on this one.
It has been in the past, though.
But that's sort of a very narrow process, and I think at that point, though, if there are problems and there are people aren't playing by the rules, the zoning rules, then I think we look at what we can do to enhance that.
So if the council were to approve an ordinance with some additional requirements for these kinds of operations, those then could be incorporated in some fashion, either in the entertainment permit or the conditional use permit, or both.
Or just as a basic zoning standard, or city municipal code standard that PD and code enforcement enforce.
Okay. Well, I just remember the years that we worked on nightclubs, trying to draw the line between the good clubs and the bad clubs. And the good clubs followed the rules and the bad clubs didn't, but that doesn't mean you can get rid of the bad clubs. And so that enforcement piece of this is really a key part of it. Knowing that we can enforce whatever it is we decide to do would really be important to me. And it's not just a club, but any club that fits in this category. And I have already received another communication, which I passed on to the planning department, from somebody else who thinks it's a great idea, and they want to bring their version of gentlemen's clubs, bikini bar, I don't know what they call it, to San Jose, because they think it's a wonderful idea. So we're not talking about just one club here. It happens to be one club that set off the discussion, but there's certainly potential for others. But I do think this should go to the prioritization session on ordinances. Councilmember Ricardo mentioned in the beginning, because ultimately we have to decide if this is as important as some of the other issues as well. I have some requests from the public to speak.
Mayor Massa.
Councilmember Oliverio.
So Rick, because of this club is going actually through the legal city process, they're obviously going to be observed because they have to do the permit with the police and they have alcohol. So my guess is they're going to have a higher level of supervision and enforcement than a coffee house in the city that doesn't have liquor and that's just sort of doing it, but frankly, not by the
Not
rules.
necessarily. I mean, again, if we get complaints about the coffee house, we're in there, and we have enforced against coffee houses. In fact, we have a matter pending in court. But I think that the police are much more active downtown, traditionally with nightclubs, especially, in making sure they comply with the terms of their entertainment permit.
Okay. And then Joe, talking about zoning, if someone wanted to open, and I'm not, well, try to wonder what the word might be, a store that's a retail nature, and it might have things displayed in the window, for example, water pipe, which would be something in reference to cannabis, or stores where people go to find different objects that might please them in their personal time. Now, do we regulate that?
In San Jose, we do not.
So that type of store could open tomorrow?
Correct.
Within pretty much any part of the city, or let's just talk, since we're talking about the downtown.
Correct, is that we only regulate adult entertainment, which is very specifically defined, very narrowly defined.
And you define that just for, because I know the mayor was sometimes.
It's related to whether certain parts of the body are covered or uncovered, and certain acts between individuals. But selling devices is not a regulated activity as adult entertainment.
Fair enough.
Councilmember, I want to I said there was a total ban. There is, in the downtown, through zoning, we don't allow it, but there are parts of the city where it is allowed.
Correct.
Okay. So we covered another item that some people might object to. We covered the enforcement. This, as things progress, any council member that writes a memo for, an ordinance, and then it comes to the prioritization, the time to amend the proposal is at the time of the prioritization, or is it the time of providing direction to staff to when it ultimately comes back to council? Or is it now as it's shaped in this memo?
I think it really is when you're at the prioritization. So now, these are ideas. Whether these pass constitutional muster, we haven't had final sign-off on, but the council member was working through a whole host of potential ideas, looking at other cities and what types of things we could look at. And what the final product would be take this and then work with it and see what we come back with. And maybe ideas come up at the priorities, if it goes to the priority setting session, what comes out of that as well.
Okay. I certainly think, as it's been said, reviewing what other cities are doing, whether it be Portland, Seattle, et cetera, so that obviously they have these places within their areas, also working with existing businesses that have been here that have had no issues. And I think it's important that anything that would be proposed is vetted with that, or is this only a downtown ordinance versus citywide? So I think those are questions that are relevant to the discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think part of your question was, when could council members sort of modify the request in the priority setting process? It seems to me you can do that up until the council votes.
Right.
It can be done as part of the discussion of the 32 things we're looking at, because we have done that. If you remember, in the past, we've combined some, we've modified some, and then took our vote based on
And then ultimately, when the ordinance comes back, you have the right to make changes then as well.
I just want to make sure that the work that goes into an ordinance incorporates some of those things, because if it just comes back without it, then it's, then sort of after the fact. And okay.
Mayor, may I add one last point? Thank you. I know mention was made of the storefront initiative, and I want to make sure that the committee is clear about what the council approved. Staff specifically wanted the discretion to be able to decide what kinds of businesses would benefit from the storefront initiative. Because of that, that's how it was crafted, that's what the council approved. So there's not a storefront initiative, for instance, that would likely promote this kind of business if staff believe this is not the kind of business we want to promote.
Okay, I'd like to take the public testimony at this time. Sandra Escobar.
Yes, good afternoon. Do I have to lower this thing for me too? Here we go. Good afternoon, Mayor Reed and committee members. I'm here representing AJ's Bar, known as AJ's Restaurant and Lounge Bikini Bar, and I'd like to provide some history for you. AJ's has been around for about 25 years, and at one point when I was the urban planner for the redevelopment agency in the early 90s, AJ's actually was very instrumental in helping to shape how I wrote CUP's policy and such when I was faced with having to permit in different forms 3 bikini bars in downtown San Jose.
Could you get just a little closer to the microphone?
Yes.
Thank you.
I had to permit 3 bikini bars in downtown San Jose, DB Cooper's, the Lido Club, and then one other in the Dorman building next to Original Joe's. So AJ's, I mean, what did I know, right, about bikini bars? There weren't any that I was aware of. So I went and I sat with Andy and learned the business. And so Andy mirrors a lot of what Councilmember Liccardo is proposing, except for a couple of things that he will speak on, and does till today. And that's why he, 25 or 20 years in my history later, he is still in business. Now, why I'm here before you, though, is to ask that as you move forward to form all of the regulations, that you consider that this business on his own has been in compliance, has worked, and that you not impose these regulations that you want for a downtown that's vibrant, that you have an image of, that they not be imposed citywide. Why do I say that? Because effectively you will be shutting AJ's down if there isn't any tipping, etc. And again, he will speak to that. I have an example of where regulations were done for the downtown and then they affected businesses.
Sorry, your time is up.
Oh, sorry, because I had more to say.
Well, Andy Russo is next, so he can
Yes,
probably finish.
he can finish it.
Where you were headed.
Good afternoon. I'm Andy Russo, the owner of AJ's Bar and Bikini Bar in San Jose for 25 years. I'm located in a light industrial area on Lincoln Avenue between Willow Glen and the Rose Garden. I have a good relationship with the police department, fire department, and the city, and hadn't caused any problems in that area for 25 years. I'm not in the downtown core, and I don't want to be considered part of it. So I do want basically two worlds. We don't have to go to other cities to find history of assault and robberies that end up at strip clubs. I got 25 years at San Jose. I got 17 years in Hayward. The Hayward store was closed 4 years ago because of eminent domain. And my wife ran that one. Most of the patrons that we have are 30 years and older. We basically get away from getting young people because we're really tough on IDs. You run a club based on how you operate on a day-to-day basis. You can't let a kid, if there's 8 people and one doesn't have an ID, you can't let the 9th person in because that's the one that doesn't have is a minor. So we run a real tough situation. My bouncers have been there for 18 years. The rules that really bother me, that will stop me from having a business, is no tipping. No sales of alcohol while the girls are dancing. I'm continuous operation. My girls dance from 6 o'clock to 12:30. Closing at midnight. A lot of my patrons come in after 11 o'clock at night. More club fees. We have all kinds of fees right now. We're just getting over a 5-year recession. We need all the help we can get. So please help me stay open. Thank you.
Martha O'Connell.
I'm in support of the Licardo memo. I would be interested to know if there's any regulation on the books right now specific to Vice Mayor Nguyen's concern. 2G, requiring that all performers be subjected to a background check or to obtain a permit to ensure that they exceed 21 years of age. I was born in Berkeley, and frequently when I was a child, my family would drive through a part of Oakland where it was block after block of these kinds of, quote, establishments, unquote. And it made a big impact on me as a young girl to see this. I would also, in response, I forget who said it up there, that there isn't any evidence of this. I would encourage you to read the studies done by the social scientists, which are cited by Councilperson Licardo on page 2, that there is a nexus between these kinds of entertainment, quote unquote, and higher crimes of robbery, assault, and theft. And I'm really offended by the word adult. It's really offensive. There's a lot of adults that consider this nothing but the continuing objectification and sexualization of women. We don't need this. Thank you.
David Wall?
This city has had a long history of not dealing with what Councilmember Licardo rightly is bringing forward, and the issue is nuisance and how these different clubs throughout the city create nuisances. Now, we've seen earlier how the council voted to interfere with being drunk in public with the police. 6 times you can be drunk in public now before the police will arrest you. Actually, they won't arrest you anyway because they're tired of that ordinance. Then we have the expansion of the card clubs, marijuana clubs everywhere. In other words, you've gone for sin taxes. And yet now, Councilmember Licardo has finally decided, rightfully so, to start bringing back decency to the downtown via ordinance. But the ordinance has to be constructed to go after all these different places that cause people to do things that other people object to. Now, personally, I don't have any problem with the Gold Club. I have problems with the nightclubs downtown. I don't go to the downtown at nighttime because of there's no police, or very little of them. So here you are today, you know, you have to ask yourselves how long this has been in the process, and now they're going to open up tomorrow. And yet, for all these years, even on the east side, some of these coffee shops, you go into the Vietnamese coffee shops, are de facto strip clubs. I've been in there by accident. I couldn't believe that they got away with it, but the people that were there didn't mind it, so hey. So I think you have a big tiger here to deal with. And decency in the downtown is the biggest one of them. Thank you.
That concludes the public testimony. Additional comments from the committee or Councilmember Licardo on this? I think we should just refer this to the ordinance prioritization, which will take place sometime within the next month. And don't have to deal with the merits of whether or not to direct staff to do anything today, but let's see if the committee thinks that's the appropriate thing to do.
Well, I'd rather not.
City Attorney? Hi. So if there was a 2-2 on the Rules Committee.
It'd be referred to the council for the council to take action.
So in a way,
it just reports out with the packet as no action taken.
Got it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I raised my concerns already, but I think that after listening to additional comments and looking at the timeline in terms of when this is going to come to council and whether or not we have the opportunity to add potential other establishments or venues such as some of the Vietnamese coffee shops that we've been seeing a lot of problems with in our city in recent months or even years, I'm more inclined now to allow this to go to the priority sessions. And I think at that time we have an opportunity to weigh in and add in additional concerns that we have in regards to creating a safer city. So I will move to approved and allow this memo to go to the priority session.
Second.
Okay, the motion is to send it to the priority session. I would request that the staff be prepared to deal with the scope of the how much can we do and what can we do it and when can we do it kinds of questions. It's going to take a little bit of work just to narrow down the scope of what it is we might want to do if it's a high enough priority.
Yeah, I would just say that is fair for the staff, that I think there'd be a larger discussion on the topic when it comes to the full council, and that being able to try to capture all those comments and such.
All right, we have a motion to refer it to the priority setting session. On that motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One opposed. Motion passes on a 3-1 vote. Our next item, item 13, report back on the use of first-class mail delivery notices required by the mobile home rent ordinance. We have a memorandum. Staff, anything to add to the memo and the report back?
Nothing to add.
I have 2 requests to speak.
So,
Councilor Constant?
Mayor, we've talked about this once before, and I think that we should move towards the first-class mail instead of the way we're currently doing it. So I don't know, is that something that has to come to the council for a change, or is it just a direction to staff, or what's the process to get to there?
I think the existing ordinance allows for either alternatives, and I think it's the policy, so staff would just go with the first class if that's the proposal. But the recommendation from the Rules Committee should be to the council, and then the council will either affirm it or not.
So I would like to make a motion, we refer this to the city council for a change of policy to use first-class mail.
Second.
All right, that's a motion. We have some requests to speak. Martha O'Connell?
It's working. It's fabulous. Nobody's having to go to the post office if they're not home, and it's saving thousands and thousands of dollars. So thanks very much to the Housing Department.
David Wall?
I also want to thank the Housing Department, but also for the untiring efforts of the previous speaker with reference to assisting people that are elderly in the mobile home parks. Thank you, Martha.
One more request.
Hi, Dave Boss from the Housing Department. I just want to clarify that the staff recommendation is to use first-class mail with a certificate of mailing. So it just that caveat that's the practice that we're proposing.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to get it into policy so that in 3 or 4 years, it doesn't revert back and someone says, oh, it says we can do certified, let's go back to that.
The ordinance allows for the first class or certified. This is a really accept the report type request, but I think this full council need to accept the report when the rules packet goes to council to just, reaffirm it.
Okay.
But the important point is the department's just going to continue to use first class.
Right. I think that's it on the public testimony. We have a motion to accept the report and allow the department to use the policy, and that would just become part of the Rules Committee report out to the council, putting the policy in place.
Yeah, and I just, to clarify, I just want to make sure that wherever the policy lies, it just makes that the default so we don't revisit it in the future.
We will make sure.
Thanks.
Okay, on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. That's approved. Item number 14 is my recommendation for my 2013 biennial ethics review and recommendations, which I'd like to agendize for action not on August 13th, but August 20th, along with the referrals from the Elections Commission that we talked about earlier.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is to agendize that on the 20th. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. So that's approved. Next item would be recommendation to accept the audit of the consultant agreements and agendize referral council consideration on August 20th. Referral from Public Safety, Finance, and Strategic Support Committee. Councilmember Constant.
Thanks, Mayor. One of the reasons, and I was confused earlier when I was trying to remember on the taxi when I was thinking of this audit that we had discussed, we wanted to make sure that it came here so that we could manage the agenda versus having a bunch of controversial items just automatically cross-referenced. I might also note that number 17 on our agenda is all related to this exact same thing. So what I'd like to do is select a date, whether it be the 20th or any other council date that we think is going to be a light date. I know I've lost track of how many things we've added to the 20th agenda, and just incorporate whatever's in 17, refer it to staff so that it comes back with staff's recommendations when we hear this. So whatever time the city manager believes that she needs to adequately address and inform the council on those particular issues contained in item 17. So I don't know if you have a suggestion on how many weeks that would best be.
Yes, Sharon, I think, would like to keep the audits together.
Yes, so I'm Sharon Erickson, City Auditor. If we could also pair up it's 16 on your agenda, the Regional Wastewater Facility Master Agreement Audit. If we could do that at the same time, whether it's the 20th or a different date, they're very similar issues.
Right, I think that's fine. I actually missed that when I was looking down, trying to find which item it was. So I just want to make sure that you, Deb, have enough time to address these issues so that we don't spend a lot of time at a council meeting chasing ghosts that aren't there.
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to make some comments today that you'll hear again, and I can also put in writing for that day. Really, they center around the themes of, first of all, appreciating the audits and their role in continuous improvement, and also taking very seriously any claims of fraud or criminal activity, which I believe are not evident in these audits. And so, Mayor, I'll just withhold my comments until you advise.
Okay, well, let me just back up then and say, okay, let's take 15, 16, and 17 together here. It looks like we're going to move them together. So let's get any comments from the public on 15, 16, or 17, or council members. Councilmember Chu is here. He's got a memo on 17. Let's just take this package together for comments. I have some requests to speak. Mr. Wall?
Sir, in these audits, for example, I want to use one particular issue that never was vetted out. BLP Engineering had a consulting contract with the City of San Jose's Water Pollution Control Plan. They ended up on an organizational chart. The contract that they were going after was roughly initial $2.2 million with three $1 million amendments for over 3 years. When I wrote and spoke about it, after it had passed Treatment Plan Advisory Committee and the San Jose City Council, not one dime has been allocated to this firm. Now, it would seem to me that this should have shown up in an audit, because the issue that I raised was the potential for bid rigging. Now, where is this in item 15, 16, or 17? Now, Councilmember Chu is right about 17, thank you. But these consultants come in, they get ground floor, they either low bid or whatever, how they get in. Applegate Johnson is another issue. And then they end up getting contracts. And if I didn't write about this or speak about that previous issue, they would have been awarded that contract. That's a fact. So we have to have a little bit more on the punishment side to deter, either with criminal and civil penalties, for fiduciary officers within the municipal corporation who allow this shenanigan to go forward. They should be held to task very seriously for allowing it and permitting it. Now, with reference to the regional wastewater facility master agreements, there's an ongoing violation that basically people just joke about, and that's the original master agreement with the City of Santa Clara and the tributary agencies, with referencing only one overhead position for public works. Public works, you probably, now I haven't been out the plant, so I don't know, but people tell me they're tripping over public works people out there.
Your time is up.
There were 3 issues, Mr. Mayor.
We're taking them in one motion. Any other requests to speak on 15, 16, or 17? Councilmember Chu, did you wish to speak to your memo on 17?
Thank you, Mayor, and my colleagues on the Rules Committee. Welcome back. I'm not suggesting that any criminal or illegal activities. I'm just asking for a thorough investigation based on the frequency of the occurrences. We're talking about 144, there's a number somewhere, of 144 contracting consulting agreements, and Sharon got a chance to look at 4 and 5 of them, and already found problems like ignore contract terms, change contract deliverables, and payment terms without authorization, and sometimes overpaid vendors. In some cases, the city executed agreements retroactively and to piggyback on the existing agreement. So just looking at the sample size that our auditor being able to look at, and the severity of what she had found in her report really concerns me. So I just wanted to make sure that we have a discussion in the full council, and also have a thorough investigation, and if we need to revise our rules and regulation, we should do that. Thank you.
Okay, a date for a hearing. We haven't seen the agenda for the 27th. The 20th was a little bit light when we started, before we started adding things to it, but I think we're probably, it's lengthy now. Sharon?
I'm not available on the 27th, so if it could be sometime after that.
That would probably be the 10th, because we don't meet on the 3rd, although we might have a study session on the 3rd. So the next regular council meeting would be September 10th. Any issues with going to the 10th for it? Not that we can promise it'll be a short agenda. That's, you know, we'll deal with that when we start setting those agendas, I suppose.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll make the recommendation that we take 15, 16, 17, put them for now on the September 10th agenda. We'll have an opportunity at Rules to look at the agendas between now and then as we get closer, and if we need to make an adjustment, we can make an adjustment.
Second.
Okay. That's the motion. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Not opposed. Those are approved. Taking us to item 18, CPUC decision regarding ride-sharing request by Councilmember Constant to get some city action on this as the Public Utilities Commission is deliberating. Councilmember Constant?
Thank you, Mayor. And, you know, when I put this out, I had to put it out within like 30 minutes, and I wasn't even in town because we got notice of this pretty late, that the CUP has got these tentative decisions that they're contemplating. My concern is that we have our city attorney's office in conjunction with PD, DOT, and the airport take a look at these proposed rules and see how they are going to affect how we are doing our business. Because in effect, what they're doing is saying that services that work like, look like, act like, bill like, and provide services just like taxis get regulated by the state, while taxis, basically if they're painted yellow, we deal with them, and if they're not, someone else deals with them. I just think in our self-interest for local control, and we should at least look at it and give our opinion to the CUPC before they actually make these rules final. Now, whether that ultimately means that we need to advocate for some changes to state law or whatever, that remains to be seen. I don't necessarily think we need to send this for a full council discussion. I think we just need to have staff prepared to put their heads together from those multiple departments and determine what we need to send to the CPUC if there's conflicts between what they're proposing and what we currently have in regulations, and how those different things will operate or not with each other here in our city.
City Attorney, did you have something?
Well, I was just going to note, and I think the city manager's office is going to chime in too, that, I mean, frequently these types of rate requests or regulations, whether it's water, PG&E or whatever, are handled at a staff level. And whenever it's consistent with the city's legislative policy or policies of local control and those types of things, we do everything we can to protect that policy guideline. So I think the staff can work together in coming forward with something.
So we would just refer this to staff?
Yeah, it would refer to the city manager to work with the city attorney in conjunction with DOT, PD, airport, everyone who's involved with these things to figure out how we should opine.
certainly be happy to take that. At this point, we did have a preliminary discussion among staff. I believe our feedback to the CPUC might be along the lines of supporting effective regulation of these types of new evolving transportation conveyances, while at the same time really not in any way wanting to clamp down on the availability of transportation options for the public. So I believe we would take a tone along those lines, and we could certainly put together a comment letter and provide an info memo as appropriate to the Rules Committee and to Council.
And I would just think that whenever they finalize their rules, it would be prudent for us to look at, are we treating taxis completely differently than the state is treating Uber or other similar services? Because you can be at home and pick up the phone and call for a cab to take you to XYZ, or you can pick up your smartphone and call Uber to provide the exact same thing. They bill the same, they operate the same. So I want to make sure that regardless of what happens at the state, we end up being somewhat in parity so that all of our businesses are treated equally.
To that point, I think the city manager noted that in the recent audit, city auditor noted the potential for the city to get out of the business altogether of regulating taxis. So it could go anywhere around that spectrum, from increasing our involvement to decreasing our involvement.
So as long as it's fair to all the different types of businesses that provide the same services in our city, that's what I'm looking for.
Understand.
What piqued my interest there is getting out of the regulatory of the taxi business. So your memo says a far-reaching decision has been released, but then it sounds like it's still in the works. So
I know
you wrote it quickly. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually did it from D.C. as I was at an airport trying to get a taxi to get to an airport, which was kind of funny.
Use your phone or your smartphone?
Yeah, so I actually did the old-fashioned way. I hailed it down. I just think that it's a proposed rule, and there's a comment period, and it's a very short window.
But there's no ruling yet, or there is a proposed rule. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all defined, and I don't know if maybe it's just easy for us to send out the proposed ruling. I have it in an email. I think I already sent it to you guys. Maybe we could just send it to the council so that they're aware of what the potential changes could be.
And then, Rick, if a city wants to, can it ban certain types of transportation from an airport, i.e. these share economy type of things?
Well, we do this now through our permitting process.
Right.
So to the extent you're not permitted, there are limitations. But the problem here is that what is the role of the state? What role will there be vis-a-vis being preempted? For example, let's just take alcohol, for example. We're preempted on regulation of alcohol,
right,
but we do have some limited role when through our own CUP process. Here, I think to the assistant city manager's point, we're not going to be unsupportive of, a new economy and these new options. At the same time, we want to give up local control, and particularly at places like our airport, and so we need to at least balance that. But that's why I think it is a multi-departmental discussion.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to go too long because we're pretty much done in the meeting. But is the taxi permit process, is that cost recovery to us? I know emotionally it's not, but I mean,
it's supposed to be because it's a permit. So yes.
Fair enough. Thank you.
So I don't believe we're at 100% cost recovery.
We try to get there.
Even
PIERLUIGI, I would just add, it's not just the airport, because as you know, we have taxi stands, like we have taxi stand at Santana Row. So if you're at Santana Row and you take out your smartphone, and you have the option of doing three things. You can go to the taxi stand, get a taxi. You can call a cab company and have them meet you where the taxi cab stand is not. Or you can use your smartphone to order an Uber ride or any of those other ride-sharing rides. So it affects anywhere that taxis operate. And then, of course, we have the fee for dropping off and stuff at the airport, which is separate. We use that with the super shuttles and the limos and all those other things. So it's more than just the airport. It's kind of the whole operation.
Right.
City Auditor, did you want to get in on this?
Could I just clarify? No, we're not cost recovery.
Just confirming our suspicions.
So I can't remember if I made a motion.
You did not.
Okay. So the motion would be to refer it to staff as we've discussed.
All right, we have a motion to refer to the staff for the appropriate response into CPUC. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. That's approved. Next item are committee work plans. We have T&E Committee and the Public Safety, Finance, and Strategic Support Committee work plans.
Motion to approve both?
We have a motion to approve both. Mr. Wall?
Sir, with reference to the T&E Committee work plan, if it's possible that you could call up or dial up this work plan, you'll find that in December, they have this flow study to set the residential and non-residential sanitary sewer rates. As mentioned previously, next week's agenda, you're going to set the rates for sanitary sewer for residents and what have you. I contend once again, under Proposition 218, I'm not being billed properly for the sewage that I put into the collection system. I reference a neighbor, 1,000 square foot home, 12 people living in it, they pay the same rate. Under Prop 218, there's no area for estimates. None whatsoever. You pay for your services onto the property, as Prop 218 states. I've requested that a flow meter, residential flow meter, be attached to my sewer, and source control inspectors come out, or whoever come out, and monitor how much water is discharged into the sanitary sewer system. So I draw umbrage on how these rates are calculated and imposed upon residences at different rates, I might add, with different type of housing products that are out there, townhomes, condos, high-density living places. Subsequently, Mr. Mayor, this is a very serious issue. Thank you.
That concludes public testimony on these items. We have a motion to approve both work plans.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yeah.
could make a couple of notes on some scheduling corrections. In September and October, we've got one item that's listed twice. It's the South Bay Water Recycling Update on Strategic Planning. That was intended to be in October only, so we would delete the September item. And in October, we're listing a Strategic Energy Action Plan update that should really move to November rather than October. So with those adjustments.
Okay, with those two adjustments, we have a motion to approve the work plans. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Work plans are approved. Last item is the open forum. Mr. Wall.
Sir, once again, the Environmental Innovation Center is raising its ugly and perverse head. Now, years ago, before this started, you waived $440,000 from Applegate Johnson Incorporated for liquidated damages in a last-ditch effort to secure new market tax credit funding. Fine. But the history of this group was well known with Public Works. I'm not faulting Public Works with this. But the city of San Jose took a known failed contractor with serious financial problems in dealing with its contractors and did business with them. And now look where you're at. And we're back at the same point where I asked the city manager to issue a public apology to the city attorney for causing more work because of this relationship. So we start all over again on that. But Mr. Mayor, it gets even worse because of how this place was funded in the beginning. And I have documents right here. It's actually dated 6/6/6, the devil's memo, the devil's date on a memo, showing how finance made a ton of money and forgot about it. And then somebody found out about it and reconciling a budget and cut some out to buy this property from the housing department at premium market prices. Now, I will exegete this out in detail over the next several weeks. But you could have avoided all this. You should have avoided it. And now we have the issue of fire station number 36, because in my research, Applegate Johnson's steel contractor had some very serious problems with welds, materials that weren't conforming to code. They ended up losing their contractor's license due to an insurance non-payment. So the whole process with Fire Station 36, are firefighters in danger of being in that building? Because one of the seismic study contractor is also mentioned in one of those 322
Sorry, your time is up.
creditors.
Thank you. That concludes the open forum, concludes our meeting.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor,
Almost.
I have one other correction on the Public Safety Finance Strategic Support Work Plan. There is a rules referral that we missed on our draft work plan. It's a reverse 911 system options for daycares and after-school programs, which would go to the committee in September.
Okay, is that all right with the committee to add that to work plan?
Yeah, I think I knew you wanted that and had it in my motion.
It was in
Thank
the
you.
motion, according to Councilmember Constant, all-seeing motion. All right, so that's amended. That does conclude our meeting, so we're adjourned.